Knowing truth does not require hardened practices, discipline, or taming or controlling of the mind. My concept is that truth is simple. Truth is imminent. Truth is obvious, so obvious that it is often missed. And it is presented to you in a concept, and concept is simple. It is this: there is nothing to achieve, there is nothing to attain, there is nothing you can acquire that can be kept permanently. Everything that is acquired will be lost. Therefore, that which you seek, whether you give it the name of happiness, joy, bliss, contentment, enlightenment, fulfillment, or any other thing, is simply your own essence, which is closest to you, which is most intimate to you. And it is available here and now. This is the direct truth. And the direct path is one of recognition and not of intellectual understanding, not on arriving at a conclusion through intellectual analysis. So, Ramana Maharishi classified seekers into three categories. Some were ripe and had to be told, they just had to be told that you are the eternal self, the pure consciousness, which remains unaffected by any movement in phenomenality. And this alone is the realization that hits at the core of these ripe disciples. It does not require practices, it does not require hardened discipline or one-pointed concentration. It simply penetrates into their being and becomes their reality. And that reality is reflected as peace in daily living. For the second category of seekers, they had to go through some form of investigation, which Ramana Maharishi called as self-inquiry, where he would say, be with this I that claims to be this or that. Always come back to this I, and this I is the doorway to the infinite bliss or peace that you seek. So for these category of seekers, they had to go through all the trials and tribulations of life and all the suffering of life and repeatedly come back to this I. And at some point, this I would merge into the infinite consciousness and realize its source. And that would be the end of it. Now, there is a third category of seekers who would be completely lost and would not know which path to follow, which teacher to follow, which teaching to follow, which practice to be done or it is not to be done. Confusion, chaos, conflict. For them, it's a long journey. But yes, for all these three seekers, the pathway to wholeness is the same. And ultimately, it is the direct path, the direct realization. So for some seekers, for the third category, they would go through a lot of suffering, a lot of hardships in life, a lot of betrayal, heartbreaks. The process of disillusionment can be a painful one. And they have to go through that pain and suffering in order to realize the self. And at some point, the truth becomes imminent, that it is simply this, here and now, as whatever is arising. But it is not to say that one category of seeker is superior than the other category of seeker, because in reality, there are no seekers. There is only seeking as happening. And when this seeking comes to an end, that is reflected as peace in daily living, which is self-realization. The realization of the eternal self, which is not an intellectual realization. Now what happens? we become confused which path to follow. Should we follow the direct path or the indirect path, where we first learn to focus the mind, concentrate on objects, and make the mind uh, more conditioned to quietness? And yes, there is nothing wrong with that. Those meditation practices which focus on one pointed concentration are very beneficial, very helpful in daily living. But at the same time, you see, it is a skill. Ultimately, we're teaching the mind a skill. And skill is valuable, skill is helpful. But again, skill is something that is acquired. And whatever is acquired will eventually be lost. This is the core truth of life. So we can continue to practice meditation day and night, focusing on a single point. But you see, mind learns, because the nature of mind eventually is pure knowing. So it knows. And mind creates the subject-object split. So mind learns the skill that this person sits in meditation at this time, at this hour of the day, and for this much duration. So it is quiet in that duration. It learns to be quiet in that duration. But when we get up and go about our daily life, and the world comes back, so as to speak, after the bliss of meditation, it all comes back. The restlessness, the anxiety, the suffering, everything comes back. The obsessive thinking comes back. So we are confused. And we immediately conclude, oh, this does not work. It is all fraud. It is all fake. That is the favorite trick of the mind, to turn against its own ideas. First, it says that the idea of quietening the mind through practices is beautiful. And then it practices for years. And then when something goes wrong here or there, it says, oh, this is completely useless. All these masters are fake. All these teachings are useless. It does not work for me. But nobody takes a look at this me. What is this me? What is the nature of this me? So sometimes what we are doing is, in the name of practices, we are avoiding the core question as to who is this me, who is this I, that is trying something, trying to become, trying to attain, trying to acquire. Who is this I? When we address this core question, something amazing begins to happen. We start embracing life totally. That means the heart awakens and nothing is discriminated. Everything is allowed. Everything is accepted. And that brings relief. That brings peace. True peace, which is very neutral, natural. It is not acquired. It is recognized as one's most natural state. It is the bedrock, the substratum from which everything arises and into which everything subsides. Now, there is a debate between the direct path and the indirect path. So, which one is good? Which one is better? And there is no fixed answer, there is no right answer for this. Some people go through indirect path. For some people, it is direct realization of truth. It does not matter in the end, as long as the realization happens, the awakening happens. All that matters is what happens, not how it happens, where it happens, why it happens, because all those questions are meaningless, pointless. They're just strengthening the mind. So when we do hardened practice and we torture ourselves and we force ourselves self-discipline that we never cultivated, we are essentially just torturing ourselves, and in that torture we are strengthening our mental activity. But the purpose is completely the opposite. We started with the objective of quietening the mind. because quiet mind is peaceful. That is the whole objective, isn't it? That is the objective of all the spiritual work, because deep, deep down, you are troubled by your mind and you want the mind to be quiet. But only a free mind can be quiet. The mind entangled into thinking, thoughts, identifications will never be quiet. So one has to take a look at all the entanglement that the mind is processing all the time. So we say that my mind is running 24/7 and I do not get relief, I do not get sleep. How do I quiet this mind? Well, that is the thing. The mind is not to be made quiet through practices, through forced discipline. One-pointed concentration will help. It is beneficial. But it will not bring the ultimate relief, because mind is learning a skill. And all learning of that kind is temporary. It will rise up again. Thoughts just subside for some time, you see, when you're sitting in meditation. But then again they rise up. Does that mean you shouldn't do meditation? Not at all. Meditation is a beautiful practice. Do the practices for their own sake. Do the practices to keep the mind healthy, functioning, to keep the body moving, mobile, flexible. Do yoga, do meditation, do all the practices, do workouts. They are all helpful. But the obsession with quietening the chattering mind in itself is entanglement. Thinking of practices to quiet the mind is a form of suppression, because no practice is going to achieve that. It has to be seen as to why this chattering is happening and what is the content that is bringing about all of this. It doesn't require analysis. It doesn't require picking up past memories. It is just, what you need to see is just this whole movement, that it is coming from the past. Only this aspect has to be seen, that everything is coming from the past, from childhood, any particular memory, any past trauma. No, it does not require you to intellectually process that, or to know that content, or to revisit that content over and over again. Just know that it is a movement in the past. That is it. Once it is seen that this is just a movement that is happening, that vision itself destroys or cuts off the involvement of the mind and brings peace. But when you indulge the mind more and more into thinking, because mind is used to that, mind likes that idea. It says that, okay, thinking is troubling me, so let me think how to quiet myself. You see the contradiction. It is thinking its way to quietness, whereas thinking itself is the problem. But when we look at the nature of this mind, this me, the self-centric activity, and how it is moving, creating identifications, how it is either lurking in the past or going into an imaginary future, we will understand it is this movement that is responsible for the discomfort that we face, that we experience. Now, it is again not to say that meditation practices or indirect practices for realization are bad. Japa, meditation, devotional singing, yoga, workouts, all these things are beneficial. But again, it has to be seen how this mind works. And in that seeing, what is false, what is illusory, it drops by itself. You are not to concern yourself with getting rid of a negative thought. The moment you make it your concern to get rid of the negative thought, you're putting an additional load on your mind. You're putting a burden on your mind. Then you're coming up with various tricks. Let me focus on the third eye. That is all doership. The focus on the third eye or any other system will automatically happen when it's required. So let the awareness decide what is to happen and when. You completely surrender to the flow of energy. Let it do whatever it wants to do. When you give up totally and you allow this energy to operate through you, it is then that you find true fulfillment, that you find the ultimate relief. Because then your mind naturally goes to its most quiet, simple, natural, organic state. Which is here and now, as this. But when we make it our concern, how can I quiet the mind? How should I? Because we've already assumed a lot of things. This chattering of the mind is the trouble of my life, is the suffering of my life. My mind is chattering all the time. Well, have we even bothered to sit and watch? What is this chattering? What is this content that is playing out? If we watch carefully, we will see there are patterns which are executing. They are executing repeatedly. One thought creates another thought creates a sensation, then sensation again creates another thought brings up emotion. You see, so this cycle goes on and on forever. But what if I see this entire chain and I see that none of these thoughts, even when they are arising, do not affect me? And I completely accept them lovingly, gently, and allow them to play, just like children play in a playground. The playground is not concerned with who is good, who is bad. It just allows everyone to come and play. Similarly, your mind is not to be made concerned with what is good thought or bad thought. It is simply the playground of this whole phenomenality, which appears as thinking. And in that playground, all these thoughts are made to play. But the playground remains unaffected. It doesn't have to make a choice. It simply allows for everything. And that is it. Otherwise, when we force discipline on us, sit in uncomfortable postures for long hours, thinking that somehow it will release something from the system. When we make it our concern that I must do this or do that, it is then that we get into trouble. Then we end up with more frustration. So truth is direct and simple. That you are the very peace that you seek. And there's nothing to attain, there's nothing to realize. With this simple realization, the mind naturally becomes quiet, and the obvious and the imminent is naturally revealed.